Abandonware in gaming ain't some shiny new scandal, it's the same old con, a game that promises you the moon, charges full whack for the rocket, then quietly slips out the back door before launch day. Kerbal Space Program 2 is the poster child for this mess. Early access gone septic. The warning signs were blinking red well before the devs packed up their launch pads and vanished into the void. And yet, here we are in 2025 and somehow KSP2 is still being sold on Steam. $50 no less, full price, still parading a roadmap like it's got a future and flashing trailers slicker than an oil spill. It's not just misleading, it's borderline delusional, but the wildest part, none of it is illegal. Yep, you heard that right. Steam, after all, are just the storefront. They don't own the game, they just peddle it, like blaming Best Buy if your Sony telly goes up in flames. Under current US consumer protection law, there's no direct clause for abandonware. The Federal Trade Commission can only act if there's clear-cut deception or breach of contracts, and most EULAs are stitched up tighter than a nun's underwear. So, if the devs vanish and the updates stop, tough luck, sunshine. You're left orbiting disappointment. Today then, we're firing the boosters on this saga. What went wrong with KSP2, who abandoned ship, whether there's any hope, and the question that really matters, is it time the law finally changed on abandonware and started protecting you, the gamer? So put the kettle on, grab a cuppa, and let's go full rant mode in today's video. The Kerbal Space Program story starts like all good love affairs, with unfiltered joy, blind optimism, and a lot of things going up that probably shouldn't. That's what she said. Born in 2011 from a small team called Squad, a digital marketing firm that did the old switcheroo into game development, this plucky little title let you run your own space agency with one noble mission: launch those wide-eyed green little Kerbals into orbit, preferably in one piece. But this wasn't just a laugh-a-minute cartoon caper. Beneath the cheeky grin and slapstick crashes was a brutally smart rocket sim. It was a rocket scientist's wet dream, where force, mass and velocity weren't just buzzwords, they were the difference between glory and fiery death. You built contraptions worthy of NASA nightmares, tested them to destruction, and learned proper Newtonian physics the hard way. And when you finally hit orbit or made it to the mun, that's the moon for the uninitiated, it felt monumental, not just because of the challenge, but because along the way the game had actually taught you something. Orbital decay, thrust vectoring, retrograde burns, all wrapped up in a silly space sim with genuine brains under the bonnet. It was magic, but like all aging magic tricks, it started to show its seams. The graphics, bless it, aged like milk, performance struggled as rockets got bigger, and fans, hungry for something sleeker, faster and shinier, began to dream of a sequel worthy of this legendary sandbox. Sadly though, the genius behind the original Kerbal Space Program, Felipe Falanghi, the mad scientist who dreamt it all up back in his school days, left Squad without the rights to his own creation. In 2017, Take-Two Interactive swooped in, scooped up the rights and handed the keys to one of their shiny boutique publisher subsidiaries, Private Division, and at first it felt like a match made in celestial heaven. That first trailer reveal, scored with the M83 soundtrack and loaded with glorious rocket carnage, had every nerd, engineer and would-be astronaut creaming their pants. It screamed, these lot get it. They know what KSP2 should be. The hype train wasn't just rolling, it had left the station, hit warp speed and was doing donuts around Pluto. Expectations then were through the stratosphere, so the decision was made. KSP2 should launch into early access. A smart move, right? Let the community help shape it, test and iterate, build the dream. But then the cracks started to show immediately, and oh boy, they weren't hairline fractures. We're talking full-on structural failure on the launch pad. We actually did a review of sorts of KSP2 on this very channel way back when it first touched down, or more accurately, crash landed into early access. And even by early access standards, it had no bloody right being released. It felt unfit for orbit, let alone launch. Performance was in absolute tatters. We're talking single digit frames per second on high-end rigs that could probably run NASA's actual simulation software, and click anything and pray gameplay, and the fanbase started to sweat harder than a Kerbal invited to an Epstein house party. But it wasn't even the lack of content that had people rattled. No, we expected a light feature set, of course. What had alarm bells going off across the cosmos was the game engine. Unity, bless its little heart, simply couldn't handle the ambition, the complexity, the sheer physics playground fans were craving. The game wasn't just behind, it was stuck in retrograde. And speaking of polish, those pre-launch trailers, glossy, cinematic, expensive, they looked like Pixar had teamed up with SpaceX to sell us a dream, and they did. The problem is, that dream was about as grounded in reality as a flat earther convention. It felt like a textbook case of marketing sorcery, a bait and switch, so shameless it should have come with a warning. My favourite bit from my original video though, this glorious YouTube comment. I have no respect for this narrator of the video, way too much cussing, can't take you seriously, thumbs down. What a miserable. In the end, this soft launch flopped hard. The game failed to inspire, failed to deliver, and the fanbase quietly shuffled back to the original KSP. Creaky, cranky, but still a far more rewarding ride. Not all hope was lost, mind you. There was a turning point, a chunky patch that finally gave us some proper performance improvements and a sprinkling of new content. And holy shit, for a moment there, it felt like we were back on course. The boosters were firing, the frame rates per second were no longer in the single digits, and influencers across the galaxy started revving up again, treating it as a clear sign that the devs were listening. And to be fair, it did feel like the team at Intercept Games, the ones actually building this thing, were doing their best with what they'd been handed. And that's the tragedy of it, innit? Because just when it seemed like KSP2 had escaped the event horizon, the corporate meteor struck. Despite Take-Two's PR spin doctors insisting everything was just peachy, they quietly pulled the plug on their subsidiary publisher, Private Division, and shuttered it. Game over. Projects canned, devs scattered, and the KSP2 that we were promised sold off to a firm called Haveli Investments, which sounds less like a game publisher and more like the people who would repossess your nan's bungalow. Now look, the franchise isn't technically dead. The Kerbals may yet find a new home, a new team, a new engine that doesn't melt GPUs, but this version, the one that lured us in with that cinematic M83 blaring trailer, that's been sucked into a black hole, abandoned, frozen in digital stasis, no final patch, no goodbye, just radio silence. And that, my friends, is where my rage sets in, which brings us nicely to the middle part of this video. Now look, I'm a big proponent of Steam. By and large, I think they get it right. I admire their refund policy. I respect their stance when things go tits up. Just look at the day before. When that flaming dumpster fire blew up on launch, Steam were quick on the draw, issuing refunds within hours. That's proper service, that is, recognising a rug pull when they see it and doing right by the punters. But when it comes to abandonware, Steam's record starts to look a bit more suspects, and while they're not the developers, they sure as hell can't wash their hands of it either, because here's the problem: they're not just a passive shop window, they're the retail floor, the cash register, and the smiling clerk handing you the receipt whilst they make 30% on the back of each sale. I made the Best Buy comparison earlier. If your Sony TV goes up in flames, yeah, Sony made it, but Best Buy, they sold it, and you could walk in, receipt in hand, and expect a replacement or a refund because they are the principal in that transaction. They're managing the relationship with you, the consumer. Steam is no different, and the way that they handled the day before proves that they can take responsibility when they want to. So how in the name of Uranus can they keep flogging a game like KSP2, a game that's effectively dead in the water, with no active dev team, no roadmap updates, no patch in sight, and still ask full price? It's like selling tickets to a theme park that's been shut for years but still plays the jingle at the gate. And whilst this video is focused on KSP2, let's not pretend it's the only one. There are loads of early access games that have gone the same way, abandoned with no warning, no refunds and no accountability. And that, my dear viewer, ain't just bad business, it's borderline unethical. The issue though is, where do you draw the line? You see, Steam's stance on early access is pretty cut and dry on paper. They're very clear. They say you should not buy an early access game unless you are excited about playing it in its current state and with the hope that it will get better in the future. They go on to say it's up to the developer to determine when they are ready to release, and we do not guarantee that all early access games will be completed. In short, Steam punts the responsibility straight to the devs. They admit it flat out that some games may never be finished. No promises, no patch minimums, no legally binding roadmaps. Steam doesn't police abandonment unless the media spotlight forces their hand, like what you saw with the day before when even their own PR team couldn't polish that turd. But here's where things get murkier still, and I mean London fog on a hangover murky, because when exactly is a game considered abandoned? Is it 6 months with no update? A year with no patch notes? A missing dev tweet? It's like trying to decide when mist officially becomes fog just by squinting. You know something's wrong, but good luck proving it. Then comes the big messy elephant in the room. What happens if Steam did start refunding all these half-baked, never finished early access games? You'd be looking at a financial implosion, thousands of titles, millions in sales, refund chaos. It's the kind of accounting nightmare that would make Gabe wake up in a cold sweat. So yeah, while my ideal world involves proper consumer protection for digital abandonware, the ugly truth is this: as much as the law should catch up, the practicality of enforcing it is a flaming mess. Good intentions get smacked in the face by platform scale, grey areas and technicalities that make it all but impossible to enforce fairly. Still, just because it's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it, and that's exactly why we're here. So with that all in mind, I've been cooking up my own little solution to this abandonware mess. If you can't pay the consumers back, then flip the conversation entirely and start incentivizing the developers. Steam, I'm talking to you now. You lot pride yourselves on being smarter than the rest of the pack, so here's a golden opportunity to prove it. Right now, Steam takes a flat 30% cut of all sales. Fine, no problem, that stays, but for early access titles, they should bump it up to 50%. But here's the twist: Steam holds on to the 20%, keeps it warm in the vault. The dev would eventually get their 50% like normal, but the remaining 20% only gets released after the game hits a 1.0 release. You know, an actual finished product. In essence, it would be a big paycheck for them, and everyone wins here. Steam loves it because they can make a bloody fortune in interest just sitting on that extra cash, swapping currencies, making trades, doing whatever dark arts their finance goblins do. Devs love it because there's now a proper payday waiting at the finish line, a real tangible reason not to bail at the first sign of community backlash, and the 50% income is still better than nothing. And us gamers, we get a system that encourages more complete, properly finished games with a far lower chance of being left with digital dust and broken dreams. Now sure, you'd need a few guardrails in there, like you can't just slap a 1.0 sticker on your turd of a beta build after 6 months of silence and expect to cash out. Maybe there's a rule that says you can't claim 1.0 status unless your game's been updated within the last 6 months. That alone would have stopped KSP2 from rebranding itself out the bin and pretending it was a full release. Bottom line, if we can't realistically change the laws around digital consumer protection, and if Steam won't police abandonware themselves, then at the very least we should be looking for ways to incentivize developers to see their games through to the end. Give them a carrot, hold the stick, and for the love of God, get these projects to a finished state. Gabe mate, you're welcome for the brainstorm. You can wire the royalty check whenever you like. It's a bloody shame then that we have to make videos like this, because it means someone somewhere has well and truly cocked up. And worse still, it hurts when truly great franchises get dragged through the gutter, when titles that once left a mark on gaming history are reduced to digital rubble. Kerbal Space Program 2 is sadly the poster child for a corner of this industry that we don't talk about enough. You don't hear the word abandonware thrown about in the trade press. You don't see politicians debating digital consumer rights. Even the gaming community tends to brush it under the rug because we've somehow been conditioned to expect disappointment. But no one is asking for a 10/10 banger every single time. No one's demanding every early access title becomes the next Stardew Valley or Phasmophobia. We're just asking for some honesty, some accountability, because imagine rocking up to the cinema, paying full price, only to be told halfway through the film, sorry mate, the ending isn't quite finished yet. Society would riot, but in gaming we shrug, smile and bend over like it's all part of the experience. And that, my friends, is how we have ended up in this mess. There is a way out here. It starts with the platform holders like Steam treating abandonware seriously, and that won't happen until we, the gamers, start making noise. Loud, unapologetic, relentless noise. And so until next time, my lovelies, love to you all. Reggie out.